All right, it is finally here, the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 6, and I'm really excited to open it up because I've been waiting for this device for a really long time, and I'm just excited to look at all of the changes that Samsung's actually made to this device. So this is obviously the shipping box, but I'm gonna go ahead and crack this open. Packing slip and the phone, and that's just about it. So this is the box. Of course, every single year it seems like they're shrinking, but not much has changed between this box and the 5 and the 4, other than just like the little design that you get on it showing the Z Fold 6. And of course now this is going to be a little bit more flat. It's not going to have the same rounded look that the previous folds have had for quite a while. But other than that, that's pretty much it for when it comes to the actual box itself. So let's go ahead and crack it open. So I did go ahead and get the silver shadow color. I think that this one looked the best in my opinion. You know, the navy one looked pretty cool, but I'm just kind of done with like blue phones or like weird obscure colors that don't end up looking very good in cases. So there it is, just like front and center right there. It actually looks really nice. A few things to note about this phone. The camera housing was changed just a little bit, but there's no real difference to the cameras. The Fold 6 retains the same cameras as the Z Fold 5, except for the larger sensor for the ultra wide, which just will allow for more low light performance. I'm gonna go ahead and look at what's inside here first though. Of course, inside this little slip, we're gonna get the charging cable as well as the SIM ejector tool. And that's pretty much what we've come to expect these days. Unfortunately, it's a little sad. I like to see more stuff come in the boxes, but I don't know, especially when Samsung is increasing the price of these devices left and right. It'd be nice to have like a power brick or something included here. So this is the Fold 6. I'm gonna go ahead and take it out of the package itself. It's actually like really light. I don't remember it being this light. Actually, speaking of the weight, this is only 239 grams, and it is a little bit thinner. It's 5.6 millimeters thin versus 6.1 on the Fold 5, so you can go ahead and get a closer look at that. This weight now is actually about on par with what the iPhone 14 Pro Max was, because that phone was 240 grams, but the 15 Pro Max currently is 221. So this is about 20 grams heavier than a slab style phone, which I think is kind of insane because that was one of the biggest complaints that people had with previous generations. Is just that they're way too heavy. It feels like you're carrying a brick with you all the time. Let's go ahead and do this peel. And then I'll do the peel. I should have did this one first, the peel on the front screen. Very nice. Before we talk about the inner display, I want to go over some things on the front here. Obviously, there is a new hinge design. This hinge is now a lot smaller and less intrusive. Wow. In the hand, this actually doesn't really feel like a foldable. Like, it is obviously a little bit thicker, and it is more of like a candy bar style still. It is 1 millimeter wider on that front display. This doesn't seem like it's gonna be unusable or anything. This actually seems like it's gonna be a pretty enjoyable experience. That hinge has made a huge difference too. It doesn't really protrude at all. And the overall design, of course, you could tell that it is boxier. They went away from the rounded edges. So that means that the front screen, I'll go ahead and turn it on, that cover screen is gonna look a lot more symmetrical than previous versions. So I think, you know what? I think that was a much needed change. The inner display, of course, is a 7.6 inch 1856 by 2160 display at 374 ppi. Looking at it right now, head on, it looks like there's been a marginal difference to the actual crease itself, but when I look at it on like an off axis, I can definitely still see the crease. It is still there. This isn't like, you know, they didn't do anything shocking with the crease, unfortunately. As for whether that's gonna be a big deal or not, I'm not sure because this display is now 2,600 nits of peak brightness. But one thing that Samsung didn't add to this Fold is the fact that they removed the anti-glare coating. Well, they didn't remove the anti-glare coating. They didn't add the anti-glare coating that was on the S24 Ultra, which I feel like would have made a huge difference in terms of how this is used outdoors, especially on the cover and inner display, because you don't have to worry about the crease that much if the reflections aren't as vivid. Weird choice of them to take that away, especially since this device is super expensive. Maybe it just couldn't be done on the inner display and they thought it'd be a waste to do it on this, but I feel like that would have been really nice to have. Now, of course, while I go ahead and do the setup, there are a couple of things that I want to talk about. The SoC is going to be the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, which is nice. That's what was in the S24 Ultra, a really powerful, really efficient chip. It is weird that this is, very close to the end of the 8 Gen 3's life cycle. We're about like halfway through, but they do this every year with the folds. Like last year was the 8 Gen 2 and then the S24 Ultra came out. So it's not that big of a deal. It's still a really powerful chip. And obviously on a device like this, I think that works very well because you have this massive screen to push. And for games and for media, it makes sense to have a more powerful SoC. So that's one thing that I'm worried about with the Pixel Fold that's coming. I don't think that it's going to have, nearly as good of performance when it comes to, playing games and stuff like that. So I think that it's nice that Samsung, even though this device is really expensive, is going the higher end route and picking the components that are actually going to make a difference. Of course, there is no microSD card expansion on the Fold lineup. They've completely removed that from their mobile phones for a very long time now. I think only some of their budget phones have that, if I'm not mistaken. But this phone does come in a few variants. So this is the 256 gig variant. Each variant of the storage comes with the same amount of 12 gigs of RAM. So whether you go for the 256 gig or the 512 or the 1 terabyte, each one is going to have the same performance. They're both UFS 4.0. Both have the same storage and memory, I believe, as the Z Fold 5. So not a big difference there. Not any difference at all, actually. There are some new colors. This one is the Silver Shadow, which I think looks really nice, but I can already tell it's picking up quite a bit of fingerprints on the back here. I don't know how well you can see that. And then as far as these displays go, both are LTPO AMOLED 2X 120 Hz HDR10 Plus displays with 2600 nits of peak brightness, and that is the exact same as the inside screen and the front screen. The cover display is a 6.3 inch 968 by 2376 screen at 410 ppi, still 2600 nits peak brightness, HDR10 Plus, and of course it is 120 Hertz. And now the aspect ratio is more akin to like a 21:9 display, just because of how rectangular it is and that they did make it 1 millimeter wider. It is less narrow. I'm gonna have to find out how the experience is when it comes to typing on this thing and actually using this in my day-to-day, and I'll save that for a full review, obviously, because I want to spend some more time with this device, and I don't think that I'll be able to tell you that over a quick unboxing video. So actually, before I move on quickly, you can still see that there is an under display camera. From what I know, I don't think they've made any improvements to how visible or invisible it actually is. I don't think there's any difference coming from the Fold 5 to the Fold 6. It's a 4 megapixel f1.8 26 millimeter wide front facing camera, and on the cover display you also have a 10 megapixel f2.2 24 millimeter wide camera. So this one's going to be a little bit wider, this one's going to be a little bit higher resolution, but it probably won't fare as well when it comes to low light, although I've always found this camera inside of here to be almost completely unusable for anything serious. So of course there also is no headphone jack, but I do want to hear how the speakers sound because they did change the way the speaker grills are. They're more similar to something like the S24 Ultra. You have them at the top and bottom to give you the stereo speaker effect. And so while I'm just here trying to set this thing up, there's a couple of things that I want to mention. I am really disappointed because this is a brand new device using the 8 Gen 3. There is no Wi-Fi 7. There is Bluetooth 5.3, and the USB-C port right there is a USB 3.2 port, but lack of Wi-Fi 7 on a brand new, very expensive device. After tax, this thing was about 3,000 Canadian dollars. It is kind of weird to see. Obviously, not a lot of people have Wi-Fi 7 routers or could even really take advantage of it, but it is nice to future-proof because internet speeds, at least here in Canada, are getting ridiculously quick really fast. Our telecom companies are now providing up to 8 gigabit a second internet over fiber. It's not like this isn't something that could be taken advantage of, so it's weird to see that they decided to not include it on this device. I'll go ahead and set up my fingerprints. So obviously right here you do have a fingerprint reader. Let's see how this ends up working out. We got to set up a screen lock first though. So I'm going to put my thumb over here and just gently rest it on there until I have it fully covered. Move it around different positions Just make sure I get a good scan. I've always liked the fingerprint reader being on the side of the device because I feel like it makes using it a lot easier. If I'm already going to press the power button to unlock it, I might as well have it unlock the device. I'm not a fan of the S24 Ultra's under display fingerprint sensor. I've been very vocal about this in the past, but I think putting it in the screen makes no sense from like an ergonomic standpoint. Sometimes it just doesn't work because, you know, your fingers are dirty or they're wet. I found that these almost never have any problems reading my finger, but when they're in the display, it creates huge issues. And there we go, we are inside of the Z Fold 6. There's obviously a lot of things that I'm gonna have to tweak and set up, like the fact that this is using the button navigation instead of the gestures, but oh well. There's a couple of things that I wanna mention with this device first. The battery is 4,400 milliamp hours. It's the exact same as the battery that was in the Z Fold 5, if you're taking any hints from this video so far. It is 25 watt wired and 15 watt wireless, with a 30-minute advertised for 50%. That, honestly, it's fine. Like the iPhone that I'm using, I believe it's 27 watts. It would just be nice to see it charge a little bit faster. I'm not entirely sure why it seems like Samsung is kind of bottlenecking these fold devices. Maybe the cost to produce them is just really expensive, but when we've had competitors like the OnePlus Open, that as a first generation device did really well. And I'm kind of worried about Samsung's foldables like in the future because I can't see how many people are going to stay interested in these, especially if they're raising the prices now. Like I said, I paid 3,000 Canadian dollars for this phone. However, there are some changes that I think make this device a little bit better than the Fold 5. Like I already mentioned, the 1mm wider display. However, the actual frame of the device is now matte instead of glossy. My old Fold 5 had a lot of scratches because of the glossy rails, and it also picked up a lot of oils and fingerprint residue. And like, I just find that matte rails on a device looks a lot more premium. But yeah, this gray is picking up fingerprints like crazy. I don't know, it is weird, man. Yeah, and then they also increased the size of the actual camera, like the lens housing. I think looks pretty good. It has this weird kind of radial effect around them though. I have to say though, the actual like mechanics of this device, like the hinge and stuff like that, nothing feels different. Obviously on first impressions though, the actual display on the inside, this is a little bit shorter and a little bit wider. The actual display looks really nice. Like it being a rectangular screen kind of creates this illusion that it's a little bit larger and more in your face, and that's something that I really liked about the S24 Ultra. That screen was huge, and it being rectangular kind of, like I said, it gives you the illusion that it's just a little bit bigger than it is. This I feel like is going to be a really nice screen to consume content on, but something that people don't really consider is that when you're using a foldable with this kind of aspect ratio, you will get letterboxing. So in a lot of cases, the content that you're watching, it might actually be smaller on a foldable than it is on a larger phone. I found that this, in terms of its use case, honestly benefits a lot more from it being easy for multitasking. I like multitasking on this device. It just makes working on it a lot easier, and if you have a lot of stuff going on, if you're looking at emails and stuff like that, having a screen that you can split view like this is insane to work off of. This is something that I've used all the time on the Fold, but obviously when it comes to an S24 Ultra and stuff like that, multitasking is something that I can't really wrap my head around because it doesn't really make sense for the screen size. So like I said, I'm actually excited to test this phone and put it through its paces. I'm really intrigued as to how this is going to stack up, and yeah, I'm going to be using this as my daily driver for the time being, and I'm going to be also taking this to Florida. It is going to be really hot. It's going to be August. So if there's any issues with overheating and stuff like that on this device, I feel like I'll be able to report to you very easily. And I will be posting stuff about this phone on my Twitter and on my Instagram. So if you want to go ahead and follow me, it's just at valismind. I'll put a link in the description as well so that you can go ahead and check it out. If you enjoyed this video or found it insightful in any way, a like and a sub to the channel is always helpful. Thank you so much for watching and supporting this content, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.